FIFA World Player 2007, Ricardo Isek, Dos Santos Leite, Kaká.
When we think of Brazilian footballers, there's a certain image that comes to mind. An image that revolves around the bodacious and bold but also brave and beatific Joga Bonito-like brilliance when beating, bending, bamboozling, thus battering backlines with the ability, grace and balance their boys built on beaches in the suburbs in Brazil. That being said though, the image isn't an entirely positive one. Because along with their undeniable brilliance, Brazilian footballers have garnered the reputation over the years of not being as physically developed as the Europeans, indulging in more simulation and cheating antics, as well as not living the life of professional athletes off the pitch. Starting from the early 2000s though, the world was introduced to a Brazilian who kept all the flair and elegance associated with his roots, but simultaneously brought the size, strength, direct approach as well as fair play and professionalism you'd usually see more of in the European game. And that Brazilian was the man we know as Ricardo Kaká. And for those of you who are too young to have seen this man play, bear in mind I'm only slightly exaggerating when I say he in tandem had the size and power of Ronaldo, but the balance and movement of Messi. Just imagine that. And for a handful of years during that era, Kaká was not only the go-to man for the greatest footballing nation ever, but he was the same too for one of the greatest club sides ever, with his incredible run culminating in the Brazilian being crowned the Ballon d'Or in 2007. The year he took his club to their 7th and, to date, final European Cup. No doubt, this was the best he'd ever been in his career. The best he'd ever been in his career. The best he'd ever been in his career, but not the best the world had seen that year. Cause you see, Kaká was simply unfortunate to have had his best ever season, the season he cemented his place as one of the greatest players of his generation, in the exact same season that was the breakthrough season of one of the greatest players of any generation. Because while this Europeanized Brazilian was breaking ankles and taking names across Europe, there was a European with more than a hint of Brazilians about him who was doing the same, but then also took his game a couple of notches higher in the domestic circuit. But sadly so, he was overlooked. Cristiano Ronaldo was overlooked. And this is how it happened. Here's the story of the Ballon d'Or robbery that no one speaks about. So we begin with a little backstory. Don't worry, it won't take long. Following an extremely successful run in the 90s where they won 5 Scudettos and a European Cup under managers Arrigo Sacchi and Fabio Capello, AC Milan starting from 1999 began going through a barren spell as a club, and following a string of unsuccessful managers, the reins were handed over to former Milan invincible and most recently Juventus head coach Carlo Ancelotti in November of 2001, who after treating the remainder of the 01-02 campaign as his settling in period, got down to some serious business in the 02 transfer window with the acquisition of defender Alessandro Nesta, midfielder Clarence Seedorf and striker Rivaldo. And to tell you the truth, the tides began to turn almost overnight. And after doing the cup double in 02-03 that included the Champions League against their biggest rivals and Don Carlo's former club, Milan went from strength to strength in the man's 3rd season, adding veteran Brazilian right-back Cafu into the books from Roma, as well as Cafu's younger compatriot Kaká from Sao Paulo. Signings that essentially acted as the final touches to the formation of a Rossoneri super team, and it proved to be just that, as Milan went on to clinch the Scudetto for the first time in 5 years in 2004 and only lost out on penalties in another Champions League final in a game they dominated, led by 3 goals at half time, and in all honesty were terribly unlucky not to see out in normal time. Yes, we indeed are referring to the Miracle of Istanbul. But despite those shoddy 10 odd minutes that night, nothing changes the fact that Milan in those initial years of Carlo Ancelotti were a serious threat across both Italy and Europe. They had arguably the greatest backline ever in Cafu, Stam, Nesta and Maldini, as complete of a midfield as you'll ever see, with the destroyer Gattuso, the orchestrator Pirlo, the workhorse Seedorf, the match winner Kaká, behind a very dynamic attacking force that included recent Ballon d'Or winner Andrei Shevchenko. These guys were a problem. Just not for long. You see, Mr. Ancelotti did business with one clear agenda. He wanted success and he wanted it now, and therefore it was only natural that most of his signings from that period, like Cafu, Stam, were established internationals who were around, if not the north of 30, and therefore the reign of terror, as dominant as it was also inevitably pretty short-lived. And fast forward only a mere few years to 2006-2007, AC Milan were a shadow of that legendary side who dominated Italy and Europe, winning the league and reaching 2 Champions League finals in 3 years. Shevchenko was gone, Stam was gone, Maldini was 38, Cafu was 36, Vida was 33, and Nesta was suffering from injuries throughout the entire campaign. This was a team that, despite still having many of the big names on their register, were breaking down in front of our very eyes. But this was the situation, this was the time, this was the year where this man stood up and essentially dragged his team to European glory. And with the rest of the side very aware of their now limitations, Maldini and co for most parts that campaign abandoned taking it to teams like they did during their peak a few years back, focused more on game management and seeing tough fixtures through, with their games mostly ending in wins, losses and draws all via narrow margins, and leave it to the jewel in their crown to shine over each and every foe. And shine he sure did. Kaká in Europe that year was in the form of his life, registering 10 goals and 3 assists after playing all 13 games, starting with the man of the match performance in the first game, smashing in a hat-trick against Anderlecht in another group game, getting a crucial extra time winner in the second leg of the last 16 against Celtic, and of course, something no doubt you'd have seen before, a total of 3 goals in 2 games in the semi-final ties against Manchester United, which included one of the competition's all-time great solo efforts of Kaká that eventually took Milan all the way to Athens, where they rightfully avenged their loss against Liverpool. No question, Ricardo Kaká was the undisputed MVP of the Champions League that year, and not many even come close. Not many, but not any. Or in words which make sense, there was only one man that ran Kaká close in Europe in 06-07. One modish, mullish but maturing wide mid in Manchester who was in his 4th season with the biggest club in the country. You see, much like Kaká, Ronaldo also arrived at a new club from his home country in 2003. But the difference? He was even younger and joined a team a couple of steps further back in transition, having just sold arguably their best player in the last 10 years. And coupled that with Ronnie's lack of physical development early on, it took the scrawny Portuguese a little while to adapt to the Premier League, and a little longer than that to dominate the Premier League. And after a decent first 3 seasons where he saw cup success and gradually improved his numbers year by year, it was 2006-2007 where Ronaldo not only managed to finally conquer England, but also begin his legendary run in Europe, a competition where he now finds himself atop the leaderboard for all of apps, goals and assists. And in that season, Ronaldo reached the semi-final with Manchester United, on the way putting up some memorable performances like when he returned to Lisbon to face his former club's biggest rivals Benfica, a club he incidentally grew up supporting, though that, to be fair, resulted in very little sympathy from the winger once the whistle blew, as Ronnie danced around the defence all night, stamping his mark on the game from the get-go. And despite none of the Benfica players managing to get anywhere near him, this was a display they were certainly going to get clear flashbacks of for a long time to come. Ronaldo then followed that up with further solid displays in tight games against Lille before putting up another one of his greatest European performances ever against Roma. Though the difference here was, while the Benfica tie was memorable for his solo display, this game was memorable both for him as an individual as well as his entire team. Individually, Cristiano finally opened his UCL account after 27 games, something that just sounds amazing now given just how many he's gone on to score since, getting 2 goals and an assist on the night, while much like the Benfica tie, terrorizing Roma's defense, this time to the point where the defenders allegedly threatened him to stop dribbling. Though this did nothing but as good as confirm the once written off show pony with no end product has now indeed become a threat, and become a threat even on the biggest and most difficult stage, that is Champions League football against an Italian defense. Ronnie then went on to score another goal and a solid showing in the semi-final first leg against AC Milan. Yes, the one where Kaká indeed stole the show, but unfortunately let his inexperience show in the return leg at the San Siro, where he was heavily double-teamed and man-marked in a game where United lost 3-0 with Kaká himself netting one of the goals, showing that while they were both stellar in Europe that season, there was a clear and definitive standout in the Champions League. However, sorry to say, there are a few things concerning 2006-2007, particularly concerning these two individuals, that have been heavily overlooked over the years. As I've said many times before, there is no question that the Champions League is the premier competition in football. It's the highest level in any form of football, and while it no doubt should have more of a weight when determining the level of a player than any other competition, by no means should it completely overhaul every other competition, especially not the longest competition. And as incredible as he was in Europe, Kaká's domestic form that year, or lack thereof for that matter, is in fact one of the things people very seldom mention. He finished 4th with Milan in the league, managed to get only 8 goals in 31 games, which even for a forward in Serie A in the mid-2000s isn't the best return, and even went 3 months from September to December without having neither scored or assisted in any games Milan won, during a run where they only even won 3 in 14. And even after Kaká broke his 3-month duck in back-to-back games in December, he'd then begin another dry spell where he wouldn't register another goal contribution for almost a further 2 months, eventually breaking the duck with this nice run and pullback for his old mate and Milan's new January signing Ronaldo late on against struggling Siena in the 17th of February. But of course, as much as it is 2007, given that we are talking about the domestic circuit and not Europe, a certain someone was not to be outshone. Because speaking of mazy runs against low table sides and subsequent goals by players called Ronaldo, just 8 days after Kaká reintroduced his name in the Serie A score sheets via an assist, CR7 went above and beyond and did so on his own. Because you see, he too went on a mazy run that put his side ahead, but instead of his run ending with a goal that had been replied to later on, this was the winner of the game. Instead of getting the assist for the goal, he finished his own run off by scoring himself. And instead of this goal and subsequent victory keeping his side in the top 4 race, Ronaldo's famous winner against Fulham at Craven Cottage took his side ahead in the title race. And while that wasn't the goal that definitively clinched the title for United, when it came to doing just that, it was CR7 himself who delivered once again, with his penalty against the noisy neighbours in May bringing the Premier League back to Old Trafford for the first time in 4 years. And my friend, if you took this and did a side-by-side comparison to Kaká's league form that year, unlike the Champions League where both individuals were pretty much neck and neck until the last 4, this really isn't close at all. Don't believe me? Well, let's just do just that. So in their respective leagues that year, Kaká finished 4th with Milan, 36 points off the top. Ronaldo finished 1st with United, 6 points clear from 2nd. Kaká totaled 8 goals and 7 assists in 31 games for Milan. Ronaldo totaled 17 goals and 14 assists in 34 games for United. Kaká went on 2 extended dry spells, including one where he failed to score in 11 games for Milan. Ronaldo on his own led the charts for most goals, assists, shots and crosses for United, going on a mini run where he scored 3 consecutive braces starting in Christmas, which itself was the start of an extended run where he tallied 19 goal contributions in 12 games. But mind you, he wasn't just stat padding for the sake of it, using his goals and assists to turn the tie in United's favour in tense affairs on many occasions, including against the likes of Man City and Fulham as already stated, but also Reading twice as well as Tottenham and Liverpool. In simple terms, Manchester United winning the league without Ronnie that year would have been impossible. And then factor in the pair's respective forms in the domestic cup competitions, Kaká playing only 2 games and blanking in both, while Ronaldo was once again his side's best player, taking his team to the FA Cup final and even scoring in 3 games in a row at one point. It really does put things into perspective and, well, should make you realize that if it wasn't for the Brazilian's amazing UCL run that season, comparing him to Ronaldo would have been nothing short of desperate and embarrassing, which isn't usually like Ronaldo haters, but I guess there's a first time for everything. But that's the thing, you see, even if we ignore the coulda, woulda, shouldas and even factor in Kaká's UCL run, given that Ronaldo had a pretty good run himself in Europe with 8 goal contributions in 11 games, including those 2 magical displays against Benfica and Roma, I really do find it hard to see how anyone could believe in their heart of hearts that Ricardo Kaká deserved a 2007 Ballon d'Or. Now, had Kaká actually been a part of Brazil's Copa America triumph that summer, there's no doubt that this video would have been a little harder to make for myself. But fact is, he didn't. Fact is, he had 18 goals and 11 assists in 48 games that year. Ronaldo had 23 goals and 20 assists in 53 games that year. He had an amazing run and dragged his aging teammates to UCL glory that year. Ronaldo was the main man for arguably the best team in Europe that year. He had a mediocre at best league campaign and practically non-existent Coppa Italia campaign that year. Ronaldo had a world-class title-winning league campaign and a stellar run to the FA Cup final that year. And ultimately, he won the Champions League but finished 4th in the league, had 0 influence elsewhere and missed Copa America that year. Ronaldo reached the semi-final of the Champions League, final of the FA Cup, won the Premier League and became captain of his country at 22 years of age that year. Ergo, where Ricardo Kaká was world class and at times out of this world that year, Cristiano Ronaldo was for most parts just that much better that year. Till next time people, we keep rolling.